Bill Cosby, a name once linked with laughter, family, and one of the most iconic sitcoms in television history. But today, his name carries something entirely different. Whispers of darkness, betrayal, and secrets that were buried for decades. And now, something has finally broken that silence. Just a few days ago, news started spreading like wildfire. Bill Cosby has been arrested again. At first, people thought, maybe it's old charges, or maybe it's just another legal twist. But what no one expected was Pamela Warner stepping forward. Quiet, dignified, and grieving for years, she finally spoke. And what she revealed shook everyone to the core. You see, her son, Malcolm-Jamal Warner, who played Theo on The Cosby Show, was always in the background. Smart, talented, humble, and yet distant from the limelight after the show ended. People assumed he chose a quiet life. But what if that wasn't the truth? What if something or someone forced him into silence? Pamela never liked attention. She stayed away from media, never gave interviews, never tried to use her son's fame for anything. But behind those quiet eyes was pain, and behind that pain was a story too terrifying to tell, until now. When she finally decided to speak, she didn't just talk about loss. She talked about threats, warnings, and a truth that's been hidden for years. She began with a single sentence: "My son didn't die naturally. He was silenced." Those words, they changed everything. Let's go back, just for a moment. The Cosby Show aired in the 80s and became one of the most loved sitcoms in American history. Bill Cosby played Dr. Cliff Huxtable, a funny, loving father. Malcolm played Theo, his teenage son. On screen, they had the perfect father-son bond. But off-screen, things weren't so perfect. In fact, Pamela revealed that Malcolm would often come home from the set quiet and disturbed. She thought it was just the stress of fame, a young actor trying to balance school, success, and media attention. But over time, Malcolm started sharing little things. He told her about the way Cosby controlled the cast, how he spoke to people, and how there were times when Malcolm didn't feel safe, even around people he trusted. Pamela never pushed him to explain. She thought maybe he'd tell her when he was ready. But that day never came. Years passed. Malcolm moved on from acting, focusing more on music, poetry, and directing. To the public, he was just another actor who faded away after childhood fame. But to Pamela, he was still searching for peace, maybe. Or maybe for courage. Then one day, everything changed. It was a rainy afternoon in 2013 when Pamela got the call. Her son gone. Just like that. The official cause was health-related. No suspicion. No investigation. Just grief, wrapped in silence. But a mother knows. Pamela never believed it. She remembered the way he spoke a few months before. The fear in his voice. The way he said, "I'm working on something big. I just need to get it out." She asked what he meant, but he only smiled and said, "You'll know when it's time." That time never came. And so, for years, Pamela waited. She mourned in private, watched as Cosby's scandals came out. One woman, then another, and another. The world started seeing the man behind the smile. But still, no one linked Cosby to Malcolm. Until Pamela finally connected the dots. A few months ago, she started going through Malcolm's old things. His journals, his voice recordings, old laptops. What she found were fragments of something terrifying. Notes about a meeting he had with someone close to Cosby. A name. A location. A warning. If anything happens to me, it started here. Then she found an email, never sent, written to an investigative journalist. In it, Malcolm wrote that he had evidence that someone powerful was abusing their influence and that he couldn't stay quiet anymore. Pamela froze. Everything came back. The silence. The sudden death. The look in his eyes that last time she saw him. And now, with all this in front of her, she knew she had to act. She didn't care what it would cost her. She had stayed quiet long enough. She took everything she had and went to the authorities. At first, they didn't take her seriously. Old case, no hard proof, a grieving mother's imagination. But then came the twist no one expected. A former Cosby assistant, who had disappeared for over a decade, came forward. She said she saw Malcolm being warned. That Cosby knew Malcolm was working on something, maybe a documentary, maybe a book, and that he had too much information. Her statement matched Malcolm's notes. That was enough to reopen certain files. Investigators dug deeper, and what they found shocked even them. There were payments made to individuals tied to the original show. There were NDAs, non-disclosure agreements signed under pressure. And there was one recorded phone call, hidden for years, where someone is heard saying, "He knows too much. If he talks, everything falls apart." They believe that call was about Malcolm. And then, just days ago, everything changed. Again. The world was still trying to make sense of Malcolm's sudden death. And then, out of nowhere, headlines hit like a punch to the gut. Bill Cosby arrested. Again. But this time, it wasn't for the same old charges the world had grown numb to. No. This time it was different. This time it had to do with Malcolm. Sources close to the case claim the new charges involve obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and, most shocking of all, possible involvement in Malcolm's death. Yeah, you heard that right. The man once known as America's Dad is now being looked at in connection with the tragic, mysterious death of the young man who once called him Dad on screen. Authorities are staying quiet for now. The official statement was vague. New evidence under review, they said. But behind the scenes, insiders are whispering that this case might blow the lid off something much bigger. Something darker. Something that's been hidden for years, maybe decades. And then there's Pamela Warner, the woman who once smiled quietly at her son's red carpet appearances, who avoided the cameras, who kept to herself. Not anymore. She stood outside her modest home, hair tied back, voice shaking, but eyes fierce. She looked straight at the cameras and said, "I loved my son, and I know he didn't die by accident. He died trying to speak up. I stayed quiet because I was scared. But fear doesn't bury the truth. Not forever." Those words hit hard, and the internet reacted instantly. Within hours, hashtags like #JusticeForMalcolm, #PamelaSpeaks, and #CosbyCoverup were trending worldwide. TikTok was flooded with theories, breakdowns, and reactions. Twitter, or X, was on fire. People weren't just shocked. They were angry. Some of Cosby's former co-stars, people who once defended him, began stepping back. A few even posted public apologies. One said, "I was blind. I see now." Another admitted, "We knew things weren't right, we just didn't want to believe it." But not everyone is convinced. Some fans still refuse to believe their hero could do something like this. They've called Pamela a liar, a clout chaser, a grieving mother grasping at stories. But anyone who's seen her speak, anyone who's really looked into her eyes knows, this isn't about fame. It's about pain. It's about truth. Because Malcolm wasn't just a son. He was a voice. And maybe that's exactly why he was silenced. Rumors are spreading like wildfire. That Malcolm knew things. That he had evidence. That he was preparing to go public. That other cast members were pressured into silence. That Pamela has recordings. And if even half of that is true, we might be on the edge of one of the biggest scandals in Hollywood history. But the real question people are starting to ask now is, why Malcolm? Why was he the one who had to die? Was it because he asked the wrong questions? Or maybe because he refused to protect someone's image? Or maybe because he believed that telling the truth was more important than protecting anyone's legacy? And now, finally, someone is listening. Pamela did. And maybe, just maybe, the whole world is starting to.
Perfect.